Are here, and can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? You got me. Okay, cool. If you haven't met, my name is Bryan, and man, I'm excited you guys are here. If this is your first time, you are so welcome to be here. We are excited. We are not a club. We are not a closed unit, but we welcome and we love to have everybody here. And if it's your first time and you're like, man, I don't know what's going on. People are raising their hands. They're sitting. They're standing. They were drowning people on a video. Don't worry about it, man. We're just excited you're here. We're having baptisms Easter Sunday, and here's what baptism is. It's just an outward display of what's going on the inside and what Jesus has done in your life. And if you have not been baptized, man, we would love to share that moment with you on Easter. If you want to get baptized right after this, right here in this room, we're going to have a little baptism huddle. You can hear what you can get signed up, you can get your story kind of put together, and then you will be all set for Sunday. But in the spirit of I want to invite my friend Ryan Nelson up here to talk a little bit about what it means to be baptized. All right, Ryan, tell us how long ago it was you got baptized and what exactly it meant for you.
Yeah, is this on? It is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I got baptized just over a year ago on Easter. And, so I've had like a dirty past, and like when I came to Christ, I still felt dirty. I felt used. I felt abused. But when I got baptized on Easter, I just felt so clean and so new and so refreshed and so like alive. And over like my walk with God, that Easter was the first time my mom went to church, and last month I was able to baptize her.
Isn't that cool? Ryan, the thing I love about your story is that you were able to get baptized, you saw what Jesus had done in your life, and then you turn around and you're like, I would like to see some of my family, some of my friends get baptized. So that is awesome. Give it up for Ryan. You can take that mic back with you if you want. If you are even the least bit interested in baptism, or you have a friend that you're like, I want to get them baptized like the video, just stay for the baptism huddle. We'll talk about it. So tonight we are in this series, Selfie, last week of this series, and we're talking about this. We've been talking about, in Colossians there's a verse that says that Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. Jesus is the visible image of the invisible God. Jesus is God's selfie. So over the course of this series, we've been talking about what is Jesus like? Because whatever Jesus is like, God is like. If you have questions about God, we look to Jesus, right? And so this is the last night, and thanks, man. And I want to do this. I feel like the internet has some crazy stuff on it, so I looked up the craziest selfies. You guys want to look at them? Yeah. Can we just spend like 5 minutes and go through? I found a plethora, kind of from each category. So let's put the first selfie on the screen. Yeah, this is a celebrity selfie. They're all kind of fit in there. Bradley Cooper right at the bottom. I like that one. Let's go to the next selfie. I found this is an old-timey selfie. These guys are like 1800s. They've got one of those box cameras. The top is them taking the picture. The bottom is the picture. So that's like your great-great-grandpa. Let's go to the next one. This is super, super high up selfie. I don't even know where he is, but he's way up there. That's scary selfie. That's dangerous. Let's go to the next one. Dog selfie. Everyone needs a good dog selfie. I want to look at this for a second. Where's the dog's bottom and where's her face? That's my only question. I don't understand totally what's going on there. Okay, let's go to the next one. Bill Nye the Science Guy selfie. How awesome is that? That's Bill Nye, and that's not even like a phone. That's like one of the old school crank cameras. Bill Nye may have invented selfies. We're not sure. We'll look into it. All right, next selfie. Hunger Games selfie. That's scary, actually. That face is really terrifying. Let's go to the next one. Oh, baby selfie. Baby selfie. I don't know who's holding the camera, but I like that the dog's leaning in for the picture. Okay, wait, before we get this, this may be the craziest selfie I've ever seen, and I in no way understand it. Next selfie. What is happening here? This gentleman is in a banana costume. He's either hanging or he's jumping, and he's holding a frog, question mark? I'm not sure what's going on, but that is the craziest selfie I have ever seen. All right, so we're in this series, Selfies, and tonight our big idea is this. It is finished. It is finished. We have 1 point for tonight, and that is it. It is finished. Turn to your neighbor and say, it is finished. It is finished. If I had to title tonight, I would call it I Am. I Am. The visible image of the invisible God. I believe something. I believe that everybody has a show. Right? Everybody has a show that is their show. Right? You talk to somebody, you're like, what's your show? And they'll tell you what their show is. I went over to Kevin's house, and him and Kara were watching their show. I was like, what's the show? They're like, it's our show. Everybody has a show, whether it's Walking Dead, Downton Abbey, whatever. Gilmore Girls, Pretty Little Liars, Teen Wolf, Duck Dynasty. Battles are started and fought over who has what show. And if you want to start some stuff, if you want to talk a mess about somebody's show. Right? Bring it back in. Bring it back in. I know you guys all got your favorite shows. We can talk about it elsewhere. If you want to start somebody with somebody, you talk mess about their favorite show, right? You're like, Pretty Little Liars. Those are fighting words, right? Everybody has their show. And I think nothing makes us more look like addicts as a culture than the way we watch our show, right? Because this is a typical conversation. You'd be like, hey, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I watched a little bit of my show on Netflix for a couple hours, and then 17 hours later, I was done with season 1. You're like, cool, then what'd you do? So then it was Saturday night, and I was going to go out with some friends, but I didn't because the other episode was queued up. So I watched another episode, and then I finished 6 seasons of the show, and it was Wednesday. And you're like, that's sweet. Like, that's just a normal conversation. Like, you do that with anything else, it'd be crazy. You're like, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I went tanning for like 17 hours. You'd be like, you need help. Right? No one, hey, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, I ate food for like 3 days straight. That's not right. People shouldn't do that. But somehow, because it's TV, we're fine with it, right? Everybody has their show. And I have one show in particular that's always kind of been my show. Anybody out there watch Lost? Yeah. I see you in the back. Lost was my show. Like, this show had every great thing that a great show needs. Here's what it had. It had great characters, right? Every episode, you got to see another story of a character and what they were doing. It had plot twists. Every great show needs plot twists, right? That's why you'll miss your sister's first child to watch the season finale. You're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Lost had plot twists. My favorite thing that Lost had that maybe only Lost did was somehow you would get characters in like backstories, and they would pop up throughout episodes, and then you'd watch like these flashbacks, and you'd get these different characters, and you'd be like, my mind is exploding. And it was like they started going back in time, and you were like, I'm not sure I totally understand. And then the ending of the whole show was terrible. But anyway, they did this cool thing where they jump around. And did you know that the Bible does that too? The Bible does that too, and I want to read from one specific place tonight. I want you to if you have your Bible, get it ready. We're going to go on a little trip here. It's John 8, 53 through 58. John 8, 53 through 58. I think it's coming up on the screen. It's kind of hard to see, but I'll read it. So it says, who do you think you are? It says, you are greater than our father Abraham. He died, and so did the prophets. Who do you think you are? Jesus is talking to this group of people, and they are having this argument with Jesus, and they say this. They say, Jesus, who do you think you are? And if you were here last week, we asked this question, who do you think Jesus is? Jesus is talking with his disciples, and he says, who do you think I am? And Peter, you gotta love Peter. We're all a little bit like Peter. Peter pipes in and says, Jesus, you're the Messiah. She says, who do you think I am? Turn to your neighbor and say, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? They say, who do you think you are? And Jesus answered, if I want glory for myself, it doesn't count. But it is my Father who will glorify me. You say he is our God. but you don't even know him. Hashtag shots fired. I know him. If I said otherwise, I would be as great a liar as you. Hashtag shots fired. But I do know him and obey him. Your father Abraham rejoiced as he looked forward to my coming. He saw it and was glad. The people said, you aren't even 50 years old. How can you say you have seen Abraham? Jesus answered, I tell you the truth. Before Abraham was even born, I am. I am. Now, when he's talking about Abraham, Abraham was basically like Billy Graham and like Abraham Lincoln mixed together for them. Like he was this like kind of national icon / like religious head that they looked to. And here's what Abraham did. It was 2,000 years from this point that Abraham lived. This would be like us talking about Jesus' day. And they're talking about this guy, Abraham, and here's Abraham's story. God said to Abraham that I will multiply your children. I will multiply your descendants like grains of sand on a beach, like stars in the sky. So he was this patriarch figure. And they're talking about Abraham, and they're talking about Abraham because Abraham had this relationship with God. And they look to Abraham as this person that had this connection with God. And Jesus is saying, Abe, you think Abe's cool? I was there with Abe. When Abe was around, Abe and I are cool. And then he says this, my father? Oh, God? You don't even know God. You don't know God the way I know God. And they're like, how old are you? How old are you? Abraham is 2,000 years ago. How old are you? You're not even 50. Here's the thing I want you to notice. This is the second question they've asked Jesus. The first question was, who do you think you are, Jesus? Healing people? Raising the dead? Who do you think you are? The second question they ask is, how old are you? How old are you? That was 2,000 years ago. And I look at this story, and I want to look at the people responding to Jesus, and I want to shake them, I want to slap them, and be like, you have the living God in front of you. You have God in the bod, flesh and bones, standing there in front of you. And you're asking him questions? You're asking him questions, but then I look at this story and I realize that's me. How often do we doubt God? How often do we let our questions get between our relationship with Jesus? How often do we feel that we let things, insecurities in our life get between us and Jesus? And Jesus says this. Jesus says, before Abraham, I am. Before Abraham, I am. And you might hear that, and in our English language, you're like, did Jesus not understand grammar, or did Jesus need Sylvan Learning Center? Because that sentence doesn't make any sense. But then if you think about it, and you flip to the start of the Bible, in Exodus, you find what Jesus is referencing. See, Jesus is right here. Exodus is right here. Jesus is going all the way back to the beginning of the story. Exodus is the second book in the Bible, what scholars would say is the beginning of the story. And there's this guy named Moses. Now, Moses has had kind of a messy past. Maybe some of you guys are out there and you're like, my past is all sorts of messy. Moses was there. And Moses is out tending sheep. He's tending sheep, and then this bush catches on fire, but it does not burn up. And there's these flames, and Moses hears this voice. And God in that moment calls to Moses. God had heard the cries of the Israelite people who were enslaved, and God says, Moses, I'm going to use you. And some of you guys, you have messy pasts, and God's looking at you and saying, I want to use you. I want to use you. And here's what Moses does. Moses starts to argue. Moses starts to have this back and forth with God, like, God, I can't do this. There's no way. There's no way. Do you see me? There's no way I can do this. And it comes to this point where Moses is like, who would I even tell him you are? And Moses is asking questions, and he's letting doubt get between him and God. He says, God, who would I even say? Who would I say your name is? And God says, I want you to tell them that I am sent you. I am sent you. Because here's God. God is saying my name is way bigger than you can imagine. I am all-powerful. I am all-knowing. I am all you need. And I love that moment because God is so straightforward. He's like, Moses, I know exactly who you are. I know exactly what I have planned for your life. And that word I am, in the Hebrew, the Bible wasn't written in English. It was written in Hebrew and then the New Testament in Greek. And that word, it has kind of a double meaning. It has kind of a double meaning. It means I am, and it also means I will be. So when God is saying to Moses, I am, he's also saying, I will be. I will be there with you. I will be there for you. I will be fighting with you. I will be. For some of you tonight, you need to hear that God is saying to you, I am and I will be. I am right here with you. No matter where you are or what you've heard of God or what ideas you have of God, God is saying, I will be. Which brings us back to Jesus' day. This peasant carpenter living in a Roman world with this ragtag, ratchet group of disciples. And these people standing there looking at Jesus and saying, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? For maybe some of you, you have that question of God. God, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? This is what's happened in my life. God, who do you think you are to do that to me? God, these are the things that have happened. This is the sin I feel like is in my life. I feel trapped. Who do you think you are? And Jesus looks at them. Jesus looks at them and says, I am. I am. I am and I will be. Today, tomorrow, and forever. The story of the Gospels is this. It's how God put on flesh and blood, moved into the neighborhood, and became king. That is the story of the Gospels, is how Jesus became king. Jesus says, I am. Where you are deficient, I am sufficient. Where you can't, I can. I am. I love this quote. It says this. It says, Christianity is not the sacrifice we make, but the sacrifice we trust. Jesus is where God does, and where the cross is where God did. The cross is where God did. But here's the thing about the story, is that Jesus didn't come just to kick it with us and like as a human. Right? God wasn't like, I just want to come down and to hang out with humans and then that'll be it and I'll heal some people. Does anybody watch Undercover Boss? Man, that used to be my show for a little while. That show was great. The thing I love about Undercover Boss is it's always the empire mega head of the company coming down and working with the people who are on the street. I was talking to somebody recently and they were like, man, the thing I don't like about my job is that the bosses just don't understand. The people at the top do not understand the people at the bottom. They don't know what we go through. They don't know what we have to deal with. And I was like, man, isn't that God? Isn't that the heart of God? God looked at us here and was like, you know what? I'm not going to let them live exactly where they're at. I'm not going to let them live in sin. And the term sin is kind of interesting because we have this term sin, and I think it's gotten too big for us. We're like, man, I don't know. I don't even know what that means. It's like a junk drawer term where we just put whatever we want in there. Or maybe we're like, I don't even understand what sin is. Here's what the sin meant in the Bible days. It was an archery term. It literally meant to miss the mark. So if you had an arrow and you strung it up and you let it go and it went straight past your mark, that's what the term was. It was to miss the mark. And for some of us, we feel right now like we're just missing the mark. Like we just can't hit the target. And here's the thing is we have all been there. The Bible says we are all broken. We have all fallen short. And the gospel isn't a I can gospel. The gospel isn't a I am gospel. The gospel is a he did gospel. Because I can't do it on my own. I love the hymn Amazing Grace because it has this line. It says, Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. And I think sometimes we get to this place where we believe in this gospel of Jesus thinks I'm pretty cool, and Jesus came here because I'm pretty cool, and I think I can kind of put things together on my own. I might get some help from Jesus along the way, but I'll figure it out, and then I'll be good, and I'll have some kids, and that'll be sweet. Do we forget sometimes that the gospel is a wretch like me? A wretch like me, that each of us are broken, that the gospel, the story of Easter, of Jesus going to the cross and rising on the third day is only as powerful as we'll let our brokenness be. It's only as powerful as we'll let our brokenness be. And let me share this with you guys. I love Easter. I love Easter. I used to think it was the craziest holiday when I was a kid. I was like, Christmas is sweet because I get presents, and then Easter's kind of weird because I don't. But can I tell you this, that Easter week, man, Easter is one of my favorite holidays because every day this week, I get to wake up with the tomb is empty. The tomb is empty. Like, Jesus has risen. Jesus has beaten death. Jesus has beaten every sin we have in our life. Jesus wins. He looks at it and he says, I am. Where you are deficient, I am sufficient. Man, that is the best story ever. That's like lost times steroids times 10. Like, that is the greatest tied together for a story because it means that my life is satisfied through Jesus. I had to go to a funeral on Sunday, and it was one of my really good friends. His dad passed away like that. Maybe some of you guys have been there. Maybe some of you guys are walking through that right now where a family member or a friend or somebody has passed away or is going to pass away, and maybe you're feeling kind of just the weight of that. And I was at this funeral, and his brother was telling the story of his kid. He's got a 5-year-old kid, and he's telling the story of how do you tell your kid that his grandpa's passed away? How do you tell your kid when his grandpa's not there? And he said it was a couple days before he could even get to that place. Tell him. He said he sat him down, and with tears in his eyes, he finally got it out. You know, your grandpa's passed away. And he said he looked at the kid in the face, and the kid just had this look, and he was like, Grandpa's the best. How could Grandpa die? Grandpa's the best. And I heard that, and I was like, man, that's how I imagine the disciples. Because Jesus is there, and there's these moments where Jesus is healing people. And then there's these moments where Jesus is raising people from the dead. I don't know if you've ever been around death, but it seems pretty finite. It seems pretty final, and Jesus is raising people up from the dead, and I think my mind would be blown, and I'm like, Jesus, you're the Messiah, you're the King, let's do this, and then there's a cross. I'd be like, but Jesus is the best. Jesus is the best. And I think sometimes we forget that Jesus was thinking about us every moment to that cross. Jesus dies for the world is a powerful statement. But Jesus died for me is the most powerful statement you will ever find in your life. Jesus died for you, and I never want us to get away from that here at New Life Youth, that Jesus died for me. Every morning it's waking up and saying, you know what, Jesus? I have to remember that you died for me, a wretch like me, in my own brokenness. I have missed the mark. The Bible says we have all fallen short of the glorious standard of God. And in the story, Jesus, he's on the way to the cross. And he's been whipped, he's been lashed, and he's bleeding, and he's broken. He's giving up his body as a sacrifice for our sin. And he carries the cross, and they put the nails in his hands and the nails in his feet. And I was reading this week, this article, and doctors have gone through and they've actually looked at the story of Jesus. And they've analyzed what places would have been the most painful. And it wasn't the moment where they took bits of glass and rocks and whipped him. It wasn't the moment where they had him carry the cross or they put the nails in his hands. It wasn't even the moment they hung him up on the cross. The moment that would have been the most painful was the moment he was up on the cross, and his final words, he says, "It is finished." To utter words hanging on a cross would be the most painful thing for a human to endure. And if you're here tonight and you feel like you're living in shame, or you feel like you're living in guilt, or you can't seem to run fast enough from your sin, or you feel like there's things that are just haunting you, I want you to hear this. Jesus used the last human courage it took to get out the words, "It is finished." It is done. It is finished. Jesus looks at you and you say, "I am not good enough." Jesus says, "I am. I am good enough." Where you say, "I can't," Jesus says, "I can. I will be." That is the gospel. That is the story of Easter, that Jesus hung on a cross for our sins, and with his very last breath, with everything it took in his core, he said, "It is finished. It's finished. Let's celebrate. Let's celebrate. That is what we're celebrating for. I want you to hear this. That your sins, your past sins, everything that has happened to you, everything that you will done, finished. Everything that happened today, your present, right now in this moment, finished. And everything you will do. Everything that's ahead of you, Jesus says, it is finished. I am the answer. You say, Jesus, I have questions. Jesus, I have questions. Jesus says, I'm the answer. I am. Found this video about a week ago. It's looking at what would Jesus' life look like if it was on Twitter. And it kind of sounds silly, but we watched it in our meeting on Monday. It was Kevin and Kayla and Lindsay and Carson and I, and we're sitting in there, and you could have heard a pin drop. This video is powerful. It's about 5 minutes long, and I want you guys to watch it. This is Jesus' life via Twitter.